Welcome to Mavens of Data. This week we're speaking with Yujian Tang, CEO of OSS 4AI. Here he covered strategies for effectively engaging and nurturing a community, shared about different communities in the data field, showcasing the impact of building networks on career growth, and the dynamics of hackathons. Hope you enjoy this episode. Yujian, thank you so much for joining. For those who don't know you, can you just give us a quick run through of your background?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Kristen. Let's see. So I started out as a software engineer. I started working at IBM when I was 16. I worked there for about 3 years. I went to college to study computer science, machine learning, that kind of stuff. I published some papers, and then I went to Amazon where I worked on the AutoML system. So I worked on that for a little over a year. And then I went and did some startups, and then I got into Devril, developer advocacy, whatever. And that's kind of, that takes us up to about 2023, 2024. And then last year I started my own developer community, and we grew from 0 to 6,700 in about a year. And now we're at almost 10,000.
Yay! That's super exciting. Okay, so there are a bunch of different ways that you can get involved in communities in the data space. Can you just tell us what some of the bigger communities are or ways to get involved and how they're different?
Sure. If you think about it, I would think there's like two kinds of communities that you can get involved in. So one is you go to the online stuff, and this is really good if you don't live in like um, a very tech kind of area. So if you're not in like San Francisco, New York, Seattle, Austin, Boston, Denver, if you're not in one of these hubs, like it's good to just go online. There's a bunch of different places you can look. You can look at Reddit. You can look at LinkedIn. There's spaces on Twitter. And let's see. So I run the r/AI agent subreddit, which has about 100,000 people. There's a bunch of data subreddits. That's one good place to start. And then the other space is if you do live near a big kind of city area, you can go and go to in-person meetups. So I use Luma, lu.ma, to go find a lot of my in-person kind of things. But Meetup is also very helpful. I think of these things kind of like Meetup is like there's a large amount of different things you can find on there, and it's kind of, you have to sort through it to go look for the kind of like data or like tech kind of meetups. And then if you go to Luma has like things that are featured by your city that has kind of like the meetup style thing, but it also has a lot of what's it called, like vertical industry interest specific kind of calendars that involve both online and in-person events. So those are both good options. And I do a lot of stuff on the AI Luma. So if you go to lu.ma/AI, you'll find a lot of like the AI events.
All right, awesome. Can we actually dive a little bit deeper, because you said that you run a huge Reddit community. What was building that like, and what does the community look like when people are participating? Are people making meaningful connections? Are they meeting people there in a way that it's going to like impact their career?
Yeah, so I started the AI agents subreddit, AI_agents. There's one that's just one word, AI agents, that was taken before I started mine. But my subreddit's about 20 times bigger. Anyway, so I started the AI agent subreddit back in April of 2023, so a little less than 2 years ago. And I basically started this because I was working at a company called Zillis that did vector databases. And vector databases are really popular in retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, which is like, I don't know if you've seen this word, it gets thrown around all the time. And there are a lot of ways you can customize your RAG applications. There's a lot of nuances to creating really good RAG applications. but it's really boring. At some point, the architecture just stays the same. Your reference architecture for all this stuff stays the same, and basically um, it's just like fiddling with whatever knobs. You're just turning knobs. But then I was like, around this time, I started hearing about these things called agents, and um, at the time, like, basically they all sucked. There was nothing that really worked. But it was interesting in the sense that it was like you would leverage the reasoning capabilities, or at the time, the pseudo reasoning capabilities. We don't really know what these really are, but like the what looks like reasoning capabilities from the LLM to achieve goals, to use the LLM to run tools for you, do function calling for you, set up a plan for you, things like that. And I thought this was a much more interesting area than RAG. So I was like, let me start like a subreddit around this. And so I did. And for the first year or so, like there was basically like, I think from April 2023 to April 2024, we had 1,000 people. And at the beginning, like I would post a lot. Like I would post things that I found online, like papers or videos or things like that, just every day. And the growth was really slow. I mean, like it was like I was like really happy when we had like 100 people, and then we got to 1,000 people, and I was like, okay, well, I can be a little more hands off. There's people kind of posting regularly every couple days now. I started like a weekly thread. I started a couple different weekly threads. So I was kind of pretty hands off for a while. And then in December, we got to about 9,000. So, that growth really accelerated from April 2023 to April 2024, 1,000 April 2024 to December of 2024, about 9 months later. We got to 9,000. And then I went to China on vacation with my wife. And when I came back, it was at like 36,000. And I was like, what just happened?
Agents got popular.
Yeah. And so from there, basically, I found like another person to help me moderate it, because it was like starting to get to the point where there was so many posts that were like, I mean, there was like spam posts, like, just people trying to shill their like, random like crypto, their meme coins, or like things like this. Cause it was like, once you get to a certain size, they just start trying to do that. So I had to go and learn how to do like auto modding and stuff like that. So I implemented a bunch of like random rules, like, no links in your posts. If you're going to put a link, just put it in the comments. And I think that actually weeds out like a ton of spam, because a lot of people, what they do is they're like, oh, I see this big subreddit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to post and like advertise my thing here, and I'm just never going to come back to it.
Yep.
And then like, that's like the people that you don't want in your community. And so it weeds out a lot of that. And then, so I got someone to help me. He's a researcher at Super AGI, which is like a startup that's like based out of the Bay in India. And then I started funneling people into my Discord, and there's people like talking on the Discord now. I think when we first met in like 2021, I made this Discord, and it's like totally dead. It's less dead now. There's people who are actually talking there, which is great. And I see that there's been a few people who have had who've gotten some business through posting on this Reddit.
Awesome.
And also some people who have gotten enough business that they've gotten into business disputes directly on my subreddit, which is very weird for me, because I'm like, I don't want to get involved in your like business disputes. Like that's not what I'm here for. And then, oh my God, this was really funny. So there's these two co-founders of a company, and I'm not going to tell you the name of the company. I'm not going to tell you the name of the co-founders, but I'll just tell you the situation. So they founded this company, and they split up, and they both want to use the same name for the company. So personally, I don't care, but I know one of them, and I don't know the other one, like personally. And when they started posting about this on the sub, they were like vicious, in a way. They were pretty aggressive about it. And one of them ends up reaching out to me, and she's like, "Hey, like the blah blah blah. This guy's like not allowed to use this name, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Dude, it's just a name." And I started talking to the guy who was doing it, and I was like, "Dude, like, just use a different name, you know?" Like, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so invested in like the SEO," and I was like, "Dude, it's literally been like 2 months. Calm down, you know?" And basically, like, what I found out at GTC is I actually ended up meeting someone who knew both of them, and I was like talking to her about this, and I was like, yeah, I can't believe this happened. Like, blah 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 blah. Like, these people are so like. I was like, God, they're being so unreasonable. Like, just one of you just pick a different name. It doesn't really matter. And then the person was like, oh, it's because they like broke up. And I was like, yeah, like they had like their founder breakup. Like it happens, you know. And then she was like, no, because they were like dating, and then they broke up. And I was like, this is why it was so
You're so
crazy.
tied.
This is
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. A
oh, I
little
got
more
it.
invested. A little more
Yeah,
invested.
yeah, yeah. So
Oh
a lot
man,
of
yeah.
a lot of fun drama.
Yeah, the stuff you see, right? Okay, so for the person who is thinking about getting involved in hackathons,
Yeah.
what do they expect? How do they find, the right hackathon for them? And then what is that day going to look like? And what does participation look like?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different hackathons going on now, right? Hackathons have always been kind of this popular way for devs to try out new tools and things like that, and also for companies to get devs to try out their tools, right? Um, so there's a guy named Adam Chan who is from a company called Weaviate who runs these hack nights in SF. And these are basically like you go, you listen to talks for 3 hours, you hack for 2 hours, and then something happens. I don't really know how the judging works. So that's what his events are like. I do hackathons during the day, usually on Saturdays. I do them in Seattle. Well, actually, they're in Bellevue, but if you're not from Washington area, they're in Seattle. Um, they are a day long from 9 to 6. Basically, what I do is I spend the first hour kind of like walking people through some sample code, and then telling them to form a team. I only allow teams a maximum size of 4 at my in-person hackathons. I
Do
tell them to form.
people often come with their friends and they already sort of have a team? Or if you show up by yourself, is it like hard for you to get on a team with other people?
There's at this point there's like regulars who show up, and I don't allow them to be on the same team because I know them well enough that I'm like, okay, you guys are all very good at coding, like go be on other people's teams.
Mhm.
Some people show up with their own teams. Most people, like I would say like 75% of people don't show up with a team. And I just basically say like, okay, look to your left, look to your right, welcome to your new team. And then they just hack for the day. And then they hack for about 6 hours from 10 to 4. And then at 4 o'clock, their submissions are due. And basically by 4 o'clock, your goal is to have, I have 2 tracks in my hackathons. One is like an experimental track where you come and your goal is to just have some sort of working project, have something you can demo. And then the other one is like a production track where it's like have something you can demo and then talk about the market. Um, and so basically your goal is to, in 6 hours, build a small project that you can kind of demo. You can talk about, hey, like here's why this could be something that, may or may not make some money, et cetera, et cetera. And then you pitch, and all the pitches are 3 minutes long. I have a timer. If you go and the timer goes off, I will take you off the stage. If you don't leave the stage after the timer goes off for 10 seconds, I will just straight up be like, get off the stage. Um, but usually most people they hear the timer and they'll finish their sentence and stop. So, that's how that goes. And then we have some judges. Usually the judges are like people who are like, software engineers at big companies, or sometimes they're VCs, sometimes they're startup founders. These are like the typical type of judges that we have. And we have judges kind of vote on their favorite projects for both tracks. And then we also have a community vote, which is just like an overall like most liked project. So that's what I do at my hackathons. If you win, you get like usually some random prizes. Sometimes you get swag. And then if you do like the longer hackathons, there's like the 48-hour hackathons, like the whole weekend. Or there's like the week-long online hackathons. They're all kind of a little bit different, right? And the expectations are always a little bit different because like, in 6 hours, like I don't expect you to build anything that's like robust, and if you have it like hosted somewhere, like you're ahead of the curve. But if you're doing like a 48-hour hackathon, you should probably have it hosted somewhere. You should probably have like some tracing, some evals in there. You should probably like have a pretty good idea of your market. It should be like something that you could defend. You should probably even have some sort of FAQs ready to go. So that's what probably what that expectation is. If you do like a week-long hackathon, the expectation's even better, right? Like there's really no experimental track in a week-long hackathon. Like you should have something that is like production ready. And I know a lot of people have like, their full-time jobs, their regular lives, and doing like a week-long hackathon for them, like they can really only like hack during like, at night or part of the times like that. And that's really up to you to figure out like how you're going to do that, how you want to do that. But but it is like, the expectation for a week-long hackathon is much higher.
All right, awesome. And then so we got some questions around that in the chat. So Zafar is wondering, can a beginner get involved in hackathons? Sort of what is the level of skill that is expected there? And Tim was wondering if there's any good resources on how to find hackathons. Where do you go looking for those?
Well, I will just put this in the chat. I'll show you my event calendar, and I have hackathons pretty often. We're doing our first hackathon for the AI agents subreddit in May. And then can a beginner get involved? I think that's a tough question. It depends on how much of a beginner you are. Like, if you can write Python code or if you can write JavaScript code, yeah, that's probably good enough. I mean, as long as you're familiar and comfortable writing code and debugging by looking things up either through ChatGPT or through Google, like, you're probably fine. It might be tough for you to do one of the 6-hour hackathons because those are very time bound. And sometimes it takes people an hour just to figure out how to run the sample code. Usually those people are like the beginners who are like, I don't know what version of Python I'm using. I'm not using a virtual environment. I don't know what a .env file is. Things like that. I'm kind of like, okay, well, these are probably things you should know. Yeah, like, but as long as you're kind of comfortable writing code and debugging and you can read a stack trace, like, you're probably fine.
Okay. And then, so what would you say the benefits are for joining hackathons or even going to meetups or conferences? Like, what are the sort of benefits of the different communities?
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to go about this, right? The hackathon thing, I think joining a hackathon, there's two primary benefits to this. One is like you get to go learn how to build something, and you get to kind of like go and meet people who are also interested in like building cool stuff. Those are the two benefits of joining a hackathon. And for meetups, it depends on the meetup. So there's like tech talks, there's networking events. Those are the two kinds of meetups I would say that people generally do. The networking events, like happy hour type stuff, usually I find those to be less valuable for me. I think some people just really enjoy them though. If you just want to go like kind of like talk to people and see what's going on, it is a good opportunity. And especially if you've like recently moved to a new city, it's just a good way to go meet people in your industry. Mm-hmm. The tech talks are good for like just learning about what kind of new technology is out there, right? That's the main reason that people do tech talks. And that's the main reason that you should go check them out. Of course, that you also get to meet a lot of people who are interested in the same thing, which is also really good. I think you tend to find more, I don't know, like serious people at tech talks. I don't mean like serious like in demeanor, but I mean like serious and like people who are just much more interested in the space. I think I think those are kind of like the main reasons or benefits that you get from going to these events. And then conferences are like a totally different beast. I mean, it depends on like the conference. There's like mini conferences, like the conferences I do that are like a day long. And those you kind of go and everything gets packed into a day. It's really fast. You go for the tracks, you go for like the talks, you go for like the booths, you go for like the workshops, you go for like the people who are there. And I think it depends on kind of where you're at in your career and what you're interested in. I think early on you want to go and you want to go listen to the talks and see what these people are doing and just get an idea of it. Because I mean, my candid opinion is that at some point the talks all feel the same after a while. But at the beginning, it's good to just go get an idea of it, get a feel of it, and go ask questions. That's a very easy way to stand out from the crowd. Go ask questions, especially if there's a Q&A part. Go ask a question. And then the expo booths are really good because you get to go basically meet all the people that are working on all this new technology. And then if you want like hands-on like stuff, like you should go find the workshop sessions. Those are always like basically you go and you code something for like an hour or 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. And I think that's actually probably like if your main goal is to go accelerate your learning, that's probably the best thing to go do. Go do 1 or 2 workshops in whatever you're interested in and just check it out. If your main goal is to kind of go expand your network, probably the expo hall. That's the way you kind of go. You go in, you get to meet basically everyone. Try to talk to people for a couple minutes. Some people you can kind of figure out whether or not you're interested in what they're doing quite quickly. Some people you get to have like really in-depth, like 15-20 minute conversations. But try to spend like 3 to 5 minutes at a booth. And then it's good to listen to the conference talks if you're more new to the space.
Yeah, I guess I have 2 questions on that. So I think you mentioned when we were talking about the hackathons that you run is that sometimes the judges are VCs or maybe you said CEOs. Like, have you seen anyone later get a project funded because they met a VC at a hackathon or, get a role because they impressed somebody who was high up in a company? Like, have you seen that stuff happen?
Yeah, so fun stories. I've had three projects come out of the hackathons that I've done in the last year or so that have gotten funding or have built a business out of it. So one of them went to go and they got funding from YC. One went and got funding from Antler, and then one of them they didn't get any funding, but they did build like an actual business out of it, like a cash flow business out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So people do get things out of this. I have a lot of like friends that are VCs that are always like interested in like what's interesting, like people who are building interesting things. So what I typically do is I refer the production track winners to some of my friends. I'm just like, hey, have a chat with these people. I know you guys are always looking for interesting like engineers, and like early stage VCs, they really want to get in early. They want to like know you when you haven't like really formed a project yet, at least the good ones. They want to like know what you're doing. They want to like know why you're building what you're building, what you think about the market, stuff like that. So yeah, I've had a few people raise money or build businesses out of the hackathons that I've done.
And then I want to ask another question too. When you show up to a hackathon, how vague is the question? Like, how creative are these people that are coming up with solutions? How much of it is like you really have to come up with an innovative solution, or is it more prescriptive?
It depends on the hackathon you go to. The hackathons that I do, I basically just say like, here's an example of how you build an AI agent. Go build an agent. So I'm very open-ended about what it is, as long as you go and you build something agentic, because that's the theme. You're good. There's some hackathons that are more like, so for example, like the Weavier hackathons, like it's like oh like use Weavier. So when I was Devril at Zillis, like that was like one of the things that was like kind of like I didn't like about like the whole like working as a Devril at a company thing is like you're restricted in what you can do, and you're pretty much just like pushing. You have to just push your product. Whereas like with being a third party, like kind of like I guess like being a third party, I get to be like, here's an example. You don't have to use any of the technologies I just showed you, but this is just something that I've built. So now go build this thing. And I think it allows a lot more flexibility, allows a lot more like learning, and that's kind of what I aim for.
All right, awesome. I had another question around that, and I think I've forgotten it. How do you think being a part of these communities has shaped your own career?
Oh, dude, it has been so helpful. I yeah, I mean, like, when I started, I kind of just was like, I started as a software engineer, right? So I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm just gonna build stuff. I'm good at my job, blah 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 blah. But it was really it was really hard to find people who were interested in similar things. And so I think like going to like different community events, especially themes around like AI, or for me, AI, um, uh, I, I was able to meet a lot of people who are interested in similar things. And I mean, even like, so like we met on Reddit, right? Like, so like that's also like like you go onto online communities, you see what people are doing. Um, and it's been really helpful to like run the events. It gets me in front of a lot of people. It gives me a reason to talk to a lot of people. Um, and like going to conferences, I get to show people what I'm doing. I get a good amount of business from doing that. The hackathons has been really awesome, and like I feel like I get to see a lot of other people kind of like grow from doing that stuff, and it's really cool to do that. I get invited to a lot of events, like startup events, venture capital events, founder events, blah 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 blah. Basically, just because I hang out with people,
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so I remembered my last question, and it was sort of around you were talking about going into the expo hall and striking up conversations with people.
Yeah.
How do you think about striking up these conversations? Like, obviously, you're comfortable talking to people, but, are you thinking about something you might want to ask? Are you just walking up to people who look like they might be lonely and striking up a conversation? Like, how do you have a strategy around this? How do you like think about it?
Um, so like I think as an event attendee, basically you just go to the booths, and like these people are there because they want to show off their product to you. So you just go up there and you're like, "Hey, my name is ABC. What's your name?" And they'll be like, "Oh, my name is XYZ," And then you'll be like, "Oh, well, what is your product?" And then they'll just tell you about it. And then if you find it interesting, you can ask them questions about it. If you don't find it interesting, you can just be like, "Oh, cool, thanks," and you can leave. You know?
Do you find the people that run the booths are often technical people, or are you often talking to like marketers? Have you
It
found that
depends.
like people who run the booths are there's like value in,
It-
I don't want to say like that, but like that it's the right person that you're trying to have a conversation with.
I think it depends. It depends a lot on the conference. It depends a lot on the company, and it depends a lot on like the people at the booth, right? So some companies are able to wrangle their engineers and be like, "Go stand out at this booth." And then most of the time, you have like a sales or marketing person. Smaller companies, you'll see the founder or like some of the execs there. Usually, if you go to this booth for the smaller companies, it's talking to the founders and the execs there. They're usually quite knowledgeable in what they're doing, and that's always a very it's you can have a
They're
very
doing
in-depth
it.
conversation. Yeah, yeah, you can have a very in-depth conversation with them. The larger companies, when you start talking to the larger companies, a lot of them are sales and marketing. They probably don't have as much technical experience, but sometimes you'll find like solutions engineers or Devril people, and usually Devril people and solutions engineers have some good technical knowledge, so you can um, you can talk to them, and they'll have a good like technical conversation with you. Um, and then if you want to do DevRel, for example, it's usually good. Go talk to their marketing team. I've talked when I was just at the GTC, right? And like half of the marketing teams I talk to are like, "Oh yeah, we're trying to hire a DevRel person." So
Yeah.
if that's something you want to do, like that, these are great for that.
Okay, so segue, what is DevRel and what has been your experience with DevRel?
Yeah, so DevRel, developer relations, developer advocates. Sometimes they call them developer engineers. Sometimes they call them developer growth engineers. Sometimes they call them growth engineers. Whatever the name is. Basically, this job function is how do you get developers to trial your product? It's not even like sometimes like they're like, oh, we want you to get developers to adopt our product, but usually at that point you hand it off to sales, because like how much power do you really have in that? But you're basically your job is to go do everything that can do this. So you write blogs, you give talks, you host events, you go to conferences, you do online webinars, you write tutorials, you post on GitHub, you write integrations. You do everything that doesn't include. Oh, you know what? Actually, some Devrel even do contribute to the core product, like the open source product. But you do pretty much everything that's not core engineering or sales. And sometimes they want Devrel to do sales, so maybe not. Okay, so but it's a very wide role, and it depends. And I think a lot of companies, you can kind of define the role for yourself and see what you like to do. Um, for example, posting on social media is also a part of this. That like I do a lot of that. You do a lot of that. Megan does a lot of that. Yeah, it's a very broad role.
Yeah. No, and I do. So I was a developer advocate as well for Comet. And so I don't consider myself a developer. I consider myself a data scientist. And, really it was about educating people about experiment tracking, about reproducibility, and, showing people how they could use Comet to monitor their models and do experiment tracking and all these things.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what type of skills do you think people should have if they did want to get involved in developer advocacy?
I think so. Developer advocacy is weird, right? It's like there's two paths to get into this. So typically it's people who have some sort of technical background, like data scientists, for example. Like you understand you understand the reason why you need things like experimentation or whatever. You understand a little bit about the code. You don't have to be like a core engineer. You don't have to be like a platform engineer. You don't have to understand TPS, whatever. But you do have to be able to like write some code every so often. Typically, it's these people who are good at talking to people that I find are like very, very successful at DevRel. And then for a small minority of the roles, there's the people who are like just very loud. Like they post a lot on social media. They're like at events all the time, and then they have like enough technical experience that like they can talk to you about the technology for a few minutes, and then they can also say, "Oh, I don't know that. Let me refer you to ABC." So those are the two types of people that I typically see, and those are the two paths. What kind of skills do you need? Yeah, basically just you need to be able to write some code. You need to be able to talk to developers. You need to be nice to people. I think this is like a somewhat underrated skill. Is like I will just use this as an anecdote. There was a DevRel person I worked with, and we've talked about this because I complained to you about her. I'm not going to mention her name, but there was a DevRel person I worked with at a company that I worked for a little while, and people would come up to me and they'd be like, "Hey, your other DevRel person was really mean to me," and I was like, "What? I don't know what to say to you." I'm like, "I'm sorry you had to talk to her." But I think that's also like it's good to just be nice to people, and then I think the other thing is like you also got to be real with people. Like your job in DevRel, like yes, you want to sell your product, you want people to use your product, but like you shouldn't be out there like hard selling your product. Like when I was doing vector database stuff, like people would be like, they'd be like, "Oh, I have this use case that I need to query for certain like keywords that need to relate to other keywords." I'm like, sounds like you need a SQL database,
Yep.
And you should also know like why should people not use your product. That's also an interesting one to know. People would ask that all the time. Yeah, so you have to have that technical understanding of what's going on, what the ecosystem around your product looks like, and then you need to be able to talk to people.
Be able to write blogs and create content, and
yes,
it's very close to marketing in a way, a little bit.
Yes. I mean, in a lot of orgs, DevRel sits under marketing, and some orgs they sit under product, and some orgs they sit under engineering. It depends on what company you're working
Right.
on. But a lot of startups look at DevRel as like a marketing function. And then, oh my God. So sometimes you'll work with like marketing people who are like marketing people, and they don't understand that like marketing to devs is not the same as like marketing like a B2C product.
Mhm.
Or even like sometimes like B2B SaaS, like because a lot of the marketers don't actually like talk to people who are using the product, which I think is like this is a vast oversight. Like why would you not do that? Um, but you end up with a lot of these kind of marketers and marketing leadership roles, especially when you have like startup founders that are like not very experienced, and they're just like, we need a CMO or we need a VP of marketing or whatever, and then they don't really know what they're looking for. They don't know who they should hire and stuff like that. So you get this like clash of what the founder wants, what the VP of marketing wants, what you as a Devril should be doing, and there's some of that happening.
Yeah, no, totally. It's with developers, it's attraction rather than promotion, and you need to show the value and why somebody would want to use it, and then they're going to want to go use it anyways. And I think of it a lot like just marketing on Reddit, right? Marketing on Reddit is sort of the like poster child for how you want to talk to developers, because if you try and do a hard sell on Reddit, people are going to run you off. But if you can figure out your message on Reddit in a way that resonates, like that's likely how you should be talking to developers.
Yes. You gotta like, you just gotta be real people, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And so how could people get involved in the communities that you are a part of, and do you have any events coming up?
Yeah. Well, I did post the calendar link that I run. That's my main calendar link. Basically, if you see any events on there that are in your city, you should come by. I'm doing an online hackathon for r/AI agents in May. I'll be in New York for New York Tech Week. So last year I did this thing called the Gen AI Zoo, where I basically got like a ton of people working on Gen AI, and we had just like talked for like 6 hours. That was a fun one, and we got about 2,000 people on last year, and so
Oh,
I'm trying to take it in person this year, New York, Seattle, SF, and then kind of do some stuff like that. You can be in my subreddit r/AI_agents. There's a lot of conversations going on in there. Some of them are very interesting. Some of them are not so interesting. But you kind of have to filter for yourself, and see what you like, see what you want to see. Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn.
all right. Awesome. It's time to move over to the live question and answer if you're ready.
Okay, the
All
live
right.
question and answer, very fun.
So you sort of already started answering this question from Tim, but he's really asking about, are there quality hackathons that can be done virtually if we don't live in a tech city? So you mentioned the one that you're having. What do you think about that sort of, are there more of those? Are there opportunities there?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing more hackathons for the r/AI agents subreddit. I just, it is very hard to find like online hackathons that are high quality. And it's mainly because not a lot of people are doing them, I guess, but also because like being like
Distributed
most
is
of the people,
hard.
yeah. It's really hard to like coordinate with people online, and also because like most people who host hackathons live in like SF, New York, Seattle. So um, unfortunately, I don't have any extra hackathons that I can tell you about.
Okay. And then David is asking about community. If you don't live in a big city, if you were going to, approach communities, where would you go first?
I would move. Um, it depends on what city you work in, but um, I think if you really don't have that option, look for the companies that work on software related products in your city, um, or data related products in your city, and see what they're doing. Usually, I guess, yeah, usually they'll like, there will be events around them, and like you know, just try to find that. Like 40,000, I really don't know what a city size of 40,000 means. So I used to live in the Raleigh-Durham area. Raleigh-Durham is about 100,000. And there were tech events there. Yeah, 40,000. I have no idea what that means, to be honest. Seattle has nearly 800,000, so I'm very happy with that. SF has millions. New York has millions. Maybe look around the universities.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, there are meetups in Boston. It's probably not the most lively community. And so for myself, I mostly focus on online. And a big piece of that is just that I have children. So, I live on LinkedIn. I spend a ton of time building my community on LinkedIn and meeting other data people there. And then, I've found Twitter and Reddit to sort of be the places where it's more heavy tech focused. Like, we're talking about tech on LinkedIn, but it sort of often has more of a non-deep feel to it. And so I get my deeper stuff in other communities, but I've certainly been able to, build plenty of community for myself and feel like I'm connected and feel like I have, like I know a lot of people in the space just through mainly online.
Yeah, online stuff is always good when you're if you're in a very small town, you kind of have to do that actually.
And then what other list of viable communities can one collaborate in data analytics? So I find that if you go on Reddit, there's, all sorts of subreddits that are data is beautiful and all these different data communities, and they're all going to have a different vibe and feeling. And so you really need to, spend some time. Like, it's good to know where you can go out and find these things, but then you still need to find them and figure out what's the right place for you. All right. Awesome. So thank you so much for joining, Yujian. I know I learned a lot myself too, because I don't really participate in hackathons. But yeah, I really enjoyed our discussion, and thank you so much for joining.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me on, Kristen.